Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. We talk a lot on this podcast about manifestation and reality creation. And the fact is, there's a lot of people that do have trouble manifesting. So I wanted to dedicate an episode on why you may be having troubles manifesting. This is not comprehensive, but it's just a simple discussion of what may be troubling you. A number of people are able to just sort of pick up on the process. They read a book or they do an exercise and they make magic happen. For many, however, this process of reality creation is frustrating and elusive and quickly gets chalked up as being too good to be true. I've had people tell me New Age rhymes with sewage. I understand this sentiment in a big way, as I wasn't able to implement the process of manifestation overnight and struggled for years at understanding its process. Much of the intention of this podcast is to relay my own lessons learned to you so that you can overcome some of these obstacles that are natural and a part of the process. In fact, it's taken years and years of practice, learning, and application for me to get to this point, and I'm still just a preschooler in the world of reality creation. More than once in my life, I have given up on learning how to manifest and take control of my reality creation. I have had the belief that it is impossible, that it's not true, that it doesn't work. I was upset, to say the least. I remember one night when I went on a sort of rampage, throwing books away in the garbage, which is horrifying to me now. What I didn't get at the time was that I was being groomed for a higher purpose, and it was all a part of the process, and everything that happened was working to my advantage. I just kept on saying, why isn't this working for me anyway? In many cases, I had spent years visualizing the same thing. That was when a little voice in my head, or maybe it was a sort of feeling, I can't be totally sure, pointed me back in the direction of things that did work, that I had done. And I began to make some connections between times when things were going well, as opposed to times when they weren't, and what I happened to be reading or working on or thinking during those periods. At that moment, I realized that there was a clear distinction between esoteric, intangible ideas about spirituality as opposed to practical spiritual techniques that had enhanced my life. That was when I realized someone needed help understanding that it was all about becoming empowered. For the longest time, I needed to simply believe that the law of attraction, the law of assumption, the law of manifestation was true. It was a belief that took me a long time. So as I listened and read books about reality creation, about the law of attraction, Joseph Murphy, Neville Goddard, eventually got to the point where I started to at least accept the possibility that it was true. It was a big leap for me. Who really says you can't have what you want? After having coached in the past, I don't do that now, but working with people over the past few years, I have found it helpful to begin the process of manifesting by addressing the reasons why people are unable to create what they want. Oftentimes, understanding how you created your life in the way you have up until this moment can cause spontaneous breakthroughs to occur. Complete changes can happen without even going through the next steps. When you're truly mentally and emotionally clear, you may be able to actually manifest what you want with a mere thought about it. This is why it's important to go through the process of clearing your emotional wounds and old mental beliefs. The more you do this, the quicker and easier it will become for you to manifest what you want. Most people truly do not understand that they are the sole creators of everything happening in their lives. That's why the first step is always to get people to see how they have been creating what they have so far. And the true first step is to take responsibility for it And that's kind of hard. You've had bad stuff happen, and it is so much easier to say, it's their fault. It's the government's fault. It's the president's fault. It's the Congress's fault. It's the city's fault. It's my next door neighbor's fault. It's my dad's fault. It's my girlfriend or boyfriend's fault. It's all their fault. But it's not. It's always your fault. You are the cause. It is your responsibility. I have found it is usually much easier to manifest a specific event or material item than it is to manifest lasting changes in your life. I used to do this. I simply helped people to manifest a specific event or a long-desired material item. It was a lot of fun and rewarding to see the excitement and joy it would bring. However, I kind of began to notice that this one event or item did not bring them the lasting peace or tranquility they deeply desired within their life. After they enjoyed the initial excitement or temporary relief the item or event would bring, it was back to the dreary grindstone that was their life. It was always a letdown. This is what brought me to the realization that it was more important to help people understand how they were creating their lives than to just help them manifest a specific person, item, or event. Sure enough, when I shifted my thinking and began using this new approach, it yielded bigger, more positive, and longer-lasting results that were permanently integrated into people's lives. In a recent Neville Goddard episode, he points out a 5-step process involved in reality creation. You sow a thought, and you reap an act. Then you sow an act, and you reap a habit. You sow a habit, and then you reap a character, and you sow a character, and you reap a destiny. Having a mere thought can be creative, but not as much it is when you follow it up with an action, when you follow it up by creating a habit of actions, and you follow those habit of actions to create your identity or character. That's when you create overall lasting change. As an example, one of my former clients was an interior decorator and was having massive financial difficulties. Throughout our coaching sessions, I often spoke to her about how we create our own reality. I explained to her that she was creating financial lack and limitation for herself, and that she only needed to turn her thinking around in order to experience greater financial abundance. All generic stuff, right? I gave her affirmations for magnetizing greater financial opportunities into her life. Lo and behold, in a matter of days, she began making more money. However, I noticed that her newfound happiness was temporary. After about 5 weeks, she began to appear distraught again, and when I asked her how things were going, she told me that they were okay. I discovered that she was out of money again, but I felt that something else was at the root of her unhappiness. What I uncovered was the problem wasn't her finances at all. Her financial lack was merely a symptom of the greater feeling of lack of love in her life. She was in love with a married man who was having an affair with him. She would spend a good chunk of every day pining away, wistfully hoping that he would suddenly realize how much he loved her and leave his wife. She asked me to do meditations and techniques to get the wife to leave. And I explained to her that it was she who needed to change her thinking, not he who needed to change his lifestyle. I explained that it was up to her to realize she deserved to have her own husband who wanted only to be with her and no one else. And after all, the man she was in love with had his cake and was able to eat it too. I asked her, what possible motivation does he have to change? And from his perspective, right or wrong, he was comfortable because he had it all. He had 2 women who were fearful enough they were willing to share one man and pretend like the other woman did not exist. In the end, her financial situation was going to stay right where it was because all her energy was spent thinking about this married man. In effect, she was draining her energy field and lowering her vibrational rate of attraction. When she finally understood how interconnected her life was, and that one area of her life affects all the others, she became motivated to make changes. Once she was able to see how she was creating all the lack and limitation, and she took responsibility for it in her life, she turned everything around And after she pulled herself out of her codependent relationship, she was able to give herself back all the energy she'd been pouring into this no-win situation. Her finances righted, and she was able to enjoy success in her life again. Today, she's happily married to a faithful man who thinks about no one but her. In this instance, helping my client to manifest more money was not the answer. She needed to become aware of how she was creating her financial lack through the draining process of pouring energy into someone else who did not give it back. This became the model by which I began to help people manifest their dream life. The first step is not to manifest, but to understand how you created your present circumstances, to take responsibility for it. After this step is achieved, the rest is always easy. I see this all the time. People would come to me on a regular basis wanting to manifest a specific person, and it is absolutely possible. I've interviewed enough people and I've helped people enough that it is possible. But in many of those cases, they were putting so much energy into that other person that a lot of other things in their lives were suffering. There's always a balance. There's something else deeper than everything else. Every person is already fully creating their own reality in their own way. The difference lies not in becoming a master, but in the realization that you are a master, not becoming one. This is a self-awareness. In order to effect permanent change in your life, you must become aware of every aspect of yourself. Within your subconscious mind, there exists an aspect referred to as the unconscious or unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is where all of your emotional wounds and limiting beliefs are stored. This is the area of your mind that will work against your best efforts at achieving change until you become aware of what's inside of it. For instance, when it's time to get your bills paid and you suddenly become depressed, it's your unconscious mind. When you snap at people in traffic, it's your unconscious mind. When you spend all of your money and then you wonder why you're broke, it's your unconscious mind. When you find yourself in another dead-end relationship that you're scared to let go of, it's your unconscious mind. Whatever you're suffering from, it's your unconscious mind. In other words, anytime you do anything at all that causes you struggle or strife, you can bet it is because of an unconscious mechanism at work in your subconscious mind. And when you become aware and heal what's inside your unconscious mind, you will have a success in every area of your life. I have devoted multiple episodes and read amazing books about the power of your subconscious mind. The unconscious is a little different than the subconscious, and the unconscious mind is part of your mental energy body, which is located within your subconscious mind. The tricky part about your unconscious mind is that you are largely unaware of what is in it. Within your unconscious mind lies all of your emotional wounds and your core beliefs. One reason it is important to begin to understand and clear these areas is so that you can uncover the hidden motivations behind why you do what you do. If your life is exactly the way you want it, chances are you are not holding on to many emotional wounds from the past. However, most people's lives aren't exactly the way they want them to be, and they may never be, until they glean the desire to obtain a self-awareness of their unconscious selves. A lot of what we see in the world today is the unconscious natures of people becoming conscious. And that is this fourth density world we're entering into. A lot of our unconscious mind is coming to the surface. So when you see wars and shootings and insanity around you, it's because the unconscious is becoming conscious, and those people haven't rightly become aware of their unconscious mind, and they're letting it take control. One reason it is important to begin to understand and clear these areas is so you can uncover the hidden motivations behind why you do what you do. Your stored emotional wounds help create the building blocks and the foundations for the way you create your reality. There are many ways in which your emotional wounds will manifest as decisions and choices and preferences in your daily life. They are unconscious, which means that you're not aware that they are active. It is possible to know that you have certain emotional issues, but to still remain unconscious when it comes to enacting the behaviors linked with these issues. energy will affect you so much that you will not be able to observe any evidence to the contrary. You only see what your emotional wounds say are real. You will not see all the love that is there until you allow yourself to do so. Unhealed emotional energy is actually carried within the body or bioenergetic sphere. This emotional baggage serves to wreak havoc on our entire energy system. The results can be seen both in our physical body and in our realities that we create. The origin of this energy can have many different sources, but it can always be traced back to either emotional trauma or environmental absorption. It has also now been proven that you can pick up this energy anytime, even while you're in infancy. One theory now supported by some psychologists and hypnotherapists is that before we are born, we have chosen some of the painful events and circumstances in our lives to become more powerful or empowered. This is mentioned oftentimes in the LL research channelings with Quo and Ra. If this is true, we are truly creating every single thing in our lives and just waking up to our unlimited potential. When an event that creates an extreme emotional reaction happens to you at an early age, it generally becomes life-altering. This is because you tend to make decisions in the moment or immediately after an emotionally traumatic event occurs. Your decision is based upon the need to make sure that this never happens to you again. Thus, you subconsciously form an energy body based on this decision, or what some psychologists and spiritual teachers refer to as a sub-personality. The job of the sub-personality is to assure you that you will never have to go through this particularly painful event ever again. In other words, the sub-personality is there to protect you. It takes on an energy of its own, derived from your personal power source, and subconsciously motivates you to make certain choices and decisions that will keep you out of harm's way. This is all well and good during that particular moment of time in your life, because at that point, it was a needed survival mechanism. However, sub-personalities are always fear-based, and they drain your energy in the attempt to keep you from re-experiencing the emotional wounds of the past. What is tricky is learning to recognize that you are presently creating a reality based upon the fears of a sub-personality that was formed in the past. A sub-personality may have been protecting you for so long that you may mistakenly perceive it as who you are, but it is not who you are, it is who you were. That's why revision can be very important, because it can allow you to dissolve the sub-personalities that were created by past events. The sub-personality not only acts as a protector, it can often take over your persona entirely. When you look back upon the events of your life, you may give credit to some bad things that you experienced because you feel like they made you stronger. This is generally a healthy practice, and I have always advocated that, because you're turning a negative into a positive. You may also have attained the heightened level of understanding that everything in your life happens for your personal growth and development. The problem arises when you strongly identify with the emotional wound. Holding on to the wound because it makes you who you are will hinder your ability to create the life you want. Let me say that again, because this is often lost. Holding on to the wound because it makes you who you are will hinder your ability to create the life you want. Let it go. Further, it bolsters the strength of the particular sub-personality associated with that wound or event and strengthens the constructive parameters of the reality that sub-personality creates for you. I have seen many cases where a sub-personality becomes someone's assumed identity. As a general rule, the person is unaware that this has taken place. A sub-personality can make a person sullen and withdrawn, or perhaps it makes them outgoing and gregarious. There's nothing wrong with either of these qualities as long as the person is consciously choosing one of them. But most people aren't consciously creating their realities. Unfortunately, most people, to one degree or another, are creating their life from the fear-based perspective of an unhealed part of themselves that has become a sub-personality. This is where what has served you in the past quite well can eventually become outdated and turn into a prison. Your emotional wounds may have actually pushed you towards achievement or success until one day you realize that you aren't really where you want to be. Perhaps you were motivated by your invalidated child sub-personality, which is always trying to get people's attention. problem with this is that no matter how much attention or recognition you get, it will never be enough. This is because you are not really creating what you want. You are creating what your emotional wound wants. Perhaps you're having trouble amassing any amount of wealth or seeing things through to completion. Here, you could be seeing the results of issues you have had about deserving or being worthy of having the good you want in your life. Issues based on the belief that you are not good enough to have or achieve certain things. This is what happened to me. I felt guilty. I couldn't forgive myself, and I didn't think I was worthy. This subpersonality or emotional wound may have been formed from being told that you were not good enough, or from being born into a family that didn't think that they were good enough. Even in some rare cases, it's the belief of the mother in the womb thinking that she's not good enough that transfers to the child. In either case, you'll not be happy because you're not creating what you really want. Again, you're creating what your emotional wound wants. In essence, you can become trapped within the confines of your emotional wounds, continuously creating and recreating the same reality over and over again. Are you in a situation where it seems like it's Groundhog's Day and it's always the same thing happening over and over again? This could be from a subpersonality that has formed a habit within you that is unconscious. Emotional trauma can be slight or it can be severe. It can result from being a rape victim or from being a child who was ignored. In either case, your reality creation can be affected. Do not underestimate the power that an event could have on your ability to consciously create your reality. Oftentimes, individuals may think they've done all the work they need to do on a certain issue, that they have moved on. If you're having trouble creating exactly what you want, that might mean the work is not done. Research now shows us that you can be affected unconsciously even during the brief stay in your mother's womb. You're emotionally and energetically vulnerable from the time right before birth and throughout most of your childhood. The emotional status of your mother, along with the environment she was surrounded by, will become logged into your subconscious and manifest as certain behavioral patterns. This is why some expectant mothers take the time out to play music for their unborn child, because inherently they know they can affect their child's development even before birth. It may be hard to believe, but you can have unconscious emotional responses running from even before you were born. Your childhood ends up being the primary source of most of your emotional baggage and unconscious behavioral patterns. Here is where you make the key life decisions and formulate your beliefs and behavioral patterns around those decisions. If your parents were always scrimping and scraping to make enough money to pay the bills or for food, you may find yourself obsessed with making money as you get older. You may have made the decision that you were never going to be in that situation again. To a certain degree, this idea can serve to motivate you to create wealth in your life. However, you're now creating wealth from a fear-based perspective. You're not creating for the joy of being wealthy. You're creating out of the fear of winding up back in that place with your parents. In this case, you will never be truly happy because you are not creating what you want. You are trying to avoid what you don't want. Another way to form a belief is to be told that you are not worthy or deserving of something. You may have been told that you will not amount to anything, or that you are not going to be able to achieve the things you wish to achieve. Or you may have been told that you need to be realistic. Perhaps you have developed the belief that you are not worthy of love, or that love must be earned. This can occur simply from having an aloof parent who ignored you. The resultant feeling is that if love is freely given, then there must be something wrong with it. This unconscious belief could manifest in your intimate relationship. Since you had to work hard to get your parents' attention through all manner of unhealthy behaviors and stimuli, you now work hard to get your mate's attention as well. Then, after all kinds of hard work intended to get and capture your partner's attention, when they really open up to you, you become scared or aloof. You'll then sabotage this relationship because your unconscious belief is that true love is never freely given. Emotionally, you are an ignored 5-year-old in an adult body trying to win someone's attention because you feel unloved and powerless. Check out my episode on healing the inner child. This may address this even deeper. Two people together in this type of relationship may unconsciously battle for power and control, taking turns feeling powerful and powerless. Hearing your parents or other people argue about things can also formulate issues for you that will manifest later on in your life. You listen to key themes being hashed out, generally in unhealthy ways, and then make decisions as a child that are acted out physically as an adult. This is from the environmental energy that you absorb during those time periods. Thus, in this example, you absorb the energy of resolution through egoic clashes between parental figures. Later on in life, you may find yourself creating situations that seem to call out for an argument to settle something. You could even say with a degree of accuracy that you become magnetic to a life partner who also likes to settle things through arguing. But be honest with yourself. Who really wants to argue all the time? Continued arguing or conflict with your partner serves to lower your vibrational field and compromise your ability to consciously and purposefully create your reality. In fact, it is because of the many challenges I have hurdled and the various life experiences I've had that I became interested in the field of human development. For the life of me, I just couldn't understand why success in not just one, but virtually every area of my life had been so elusive. I struggled and strained against the currents of life until I finally began the path of internal study and self-awareness. If I had not worked through many obstacles myself and encountered the life lessons I needed to master, I would not be able to understand what people go through. Knowledge is wholly insufficient when it comes to teaching human development. Wisdom is applied knowledge, and the only way you can get that is from having worked through your own life lessons. How can you help somebody without first having learned to help yourself? A classic example of unconscious behavior is the inability to save money while making the best efforts at attempting to do so. One way you can see this behavior manifesting is when you find yourself spending as much as you're earning. You may even get a new job with better pay so that you can finally begin to save money. However, because you unconsciously do not believe you deserve to have money, or perhaps unconsciously associate having money with some sort of fear from your past, you begin spending more to compensate. Magically, your spending has increased with your earning and you still have no money left over to save. This behavior can stem from a simple lack of discipline, or it can be from feeling you are not deserving and worthy of having a lot of money. Growing up in my family, whenever you had money, you spent it. Very simple. As soon as the check came in or payday rolled around, it was time to celebrate. My mom would go out and buy a whole bunch of groceries and sweets, and we would feast. My dad would take us to a restaurant. Whenever this would occur, it was always a feeling of happiness. Thus, I viewed money as something special and extraordinary that was fleeting. It was there as a reward only, not as a regular way of life. This developed a subconscious and unconscious pattern within myself. It wasn't until I was much older, in my 30s, that I began to uncover this pattern of behavior and managed to save some money. When I first learned how to manifest things in my 20s and began to manifest bigger financial opportunities, I still had no money. I still felt helpless and depressed because I never seemed to be able to accumulate any amount of money. My life continued to be a series of highs and lows. In this way, I began to understand the need for self-awareness and to take responsibility for creating my reality. After I attained enough awareness to observe myself in action, I was able to make the connection between my present-day behavior and my childhood environment. I had been repeating the same pattern as my parents of making money and then spending it as quickly as I could. Getting better paying jobs was just like putting a bigger motor on the same old rickety boat with holes in it. I was getting nowhere fast. However, becoming aware of my unconsciousness and the behavior that followed was like finally deciding to fix the boat and plug up the holes. Sudden awareness of self in and of itself can cause you to spontaneously heal and correct unconscious behavioral patterns. Shortly afterward, I began to save money and was able to enjoy having more abundance in my life. I found out that a super incredible way to keep all the best things from popping up in my life was to judge other people for having or getting them. I'm not even sure where this came from. All I know is that from as early as I can remember, I judged all the kids who had more than I did. I was never truly grateful for the efforts of my parents while they struggled and toiled with their own poverty consciousness. I just knew that other kids had and I had not. This became an unfortunate foundation for much of the reality that I would create later. If you know anything about judgment, then you know it is an emotion that has an extremely low vibrational frequency. When you see someone who is doing something or has something you want to experience and then judge them for it, you are assuring that you will never get to experience it because you're judging yourself and you're saying they have too much or it's unfair. You're saying that about yourself because everybody is you, pushed out. In other words, you are creating a lower vibrational energy field while in the process of observing something that you want. You may be feeling that this person is bad because they have what you have always wanted, or that they are bad because only bad people can have good things. However, your subconscious mind registers this feeling as indicating that having the good things you want means you're a bad person. You cannot and will not become wealthy by judging wealthy people for having wealth. I see this on Facebook all the time, criticizing wealthy people. How dare Jeff Bezos create a space corporation and fly rockets into space when people are struggling? As a matter of fact, you will push wealthy people away from you by consciously or unconsciously judging them. Even if there's some correct ideas in what you're thinking, you will also push away the idea of wealth from you. You cannot get a healthy, lean body by judging healthy, lean people. You won't attract your dream partner by judging people who have amazing relationships. You will not achieve your dream life by judging people who are living the life of their dreams. In other words, you cannot have anything that you judge someone else for having, period. It will never come to you until you release your judgment about it. If you have a judgment about anything at all, you have work to do. The only good judgment is what you could refer to as natural judgment, or the ability to discern what is or is not for your own highest good. You achieve this by paying attention to your feeling power. You were born with this wonderfully innate gift of always knowing what is in your best interest. The problem is that people often outthink themselves. Your feeling power will provide you with a better guidance system than your logical thinking brain every time. You may be attached to how smart you think you are. You may have studied extensively in one field or another and accumulated a vast body of knowledge. However, you may have also bolstered your own ego to the point of shutting yourself off from your intuitive feeling power, which always knows better than you do. In turn, this impairs your ability to make natural judgments. When you begin to clear yourself and spend some time in meditation, you will also begin to get back in touch with this inborn natural resource. At any moment in time, you have access to your feeling power. Your feeling power does not stem from your intellectual awareness. It stems from your heart center. Many people refer to it as your gut instinct, although there is still some incorrectness in this. A feeling in your gut is actually a fear base, whereas a feeling that comes from your heart center will indicate whether or not something is actually for your highest good. If you're about to interview for a job, or buy a house, or get a new apartment, go out on a first date with a potential life partner, or make a huge financial decision, your feeling power can guide you in the right direction, because at a deeper level, you have an innate knowingness that will guide you. You can always make a guided decision in your life. If you get quiet with yourself before and or during the process of making these big decisions, you will get a feeling about it. It's the first thing that you feel before your intellect kicks in and starts weighing the pros and cons. This is why meditation is a great way to enhance this ability, because it quiets down a lot of the mental chatter that only gets in the way of making good decisions. The flip side of the coin is judging things that you do not like or want in your experience. It's true that a lot of people trick themselves into thinking they don't want what they believe they can't have. However, most people are aware of what they really don't want. The problem comes when you become judgmental about what you don't want. The difference between a negative egoic judgment as opposed to a natural judgment is that in natural judgment, there is no negative emotional charge involved, meaning that you do not have a strong negative feeling about it. A choice pops up and it simply feels good or it doesn't. No problem. You choose based upon the feeling that you get about it and continue on. If you're honest with yourself about how it feels, your choice will always be rewarding. When you're being judgmental or egoically judging something based upon your unconscious beliefs about it, you will be projecting a negative emotional charge on it. When you do this, you're actually magnetizing it into your life and drawing this unwanted thing right to you. You needn't fear your thoughts, however. You need only pay attention to what you have an emotional charge to. It's when you have a strong negative or positive emotional charge to something that you actually become magnetic to it. Thus, it is important to understand judgment consciousness, as it is a great way to discern how you may be unconsciously drawing certain places, people, and situations into your life that you do not want. You can easily know that something or someone is not for your highest good without having to judge it as bad. In fact, there is no good or bad. Again, it is only what is for your highest good and what is not. It is important to remember that everything exists at a certain vibrational frequency. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. Since all of the things you want to experience exist at a higher frequency, like abundance of money, healthy body, and a happy relationship, judgment will not bring them into your life. Instead, you will get the people, places, and circumstances that vibrationally resonate with your current emotional state of judgment. Perhaps you see someone in line at the grocery store who is wearing something you find offensive or acting in a manner that you find disruptive. Instead of ignoring them, you find yourself harshly judging them. The more you focus upon them, and the more emotionally charged you have as a judgment about them becomes, the more likely you are to draw their attention to you. Don't be surprised if they glare at you angrily or walk up to you and say something. You can even judge this by how you see videos on social media sometimes. It's the same idea. Conversely, the more excited and enthusiastic about something you are, the quicker you will bring it to you. If you were standing in line at the grocery store behind somebody you really admired or were extremely attracted to, you could wind up drawing them right to you as well. You might find them extremely interesting, or perhaps you are attracted to them. The more you feel this way, the greater the emotional charge, the more likely you are to draw them to you. Of course, this particular example is not to be confused with lusting over someone, which is a lower vibration than joy and happiness and could actually repel them away from you. Judgment is usually a projection coming from a part of you that is fearful of having or experiencing what another person has or gets to experience. During one of the more negative periods of my life, I had become very cynical. I was extremely judgmental of the world and the people in it. It was coincidentally during a time period when I also felt very helpless, alone, and powerless. The more trapped in my own vicious cycle I became, the more I judged other people around me. I judged the people who had what I wanted for having it, and I judged the people I felt were bad for getting away with living their lives the way they were. In other words, I judged people for having what I wanted and judged people for having what I didn't want. Talk about a no-win situation. The answer came to me one day that my judgment needed to come to an end. I was sitting at the coffee shop surrounded by people who were all having a great time. Someone parked their car in the lot, had their stereo cranked on high, basing the entire shopping complex. I was extremely irritated and immediately looked around for validation to see if other people were irritated as well. To my surprise, no one else seemed to be the slightest bit bothered by this. They were all still smiles and laughing, having a great time, completely oblivious to my extreme discomfort at this music. On top of that, there were other people in the coffee shop who were peacefully reading their books, completely unbothered by the music. It suddenly clicked in, at a deeper level in my conscious awareness, that everybody else was too busy creating what they wanted in life to be bothered by what anybody else was doing. Wow. I was so busy judging all the people around me for this, that, and the other thing, that none of my energy had been directed towards what I actually wanted. In essence, all my attention was being distracted towards what I didn't want or didn't like. I then realized that I could never magnetize anything I wanted into my life as long as I stayed in judgment consciousness. In a flash of inspiration, I got out a piece of paper and began writing down all the people in the world I judged for having what they had and for what I felt like they were getting away with. When I was done, I had a very large list. It included rap stars and political figures and athletes, financial geniuses, drug dealers, celebrities, millionaires, homeless people, and everyone in between. My own fear of success combined with my cynical attitude about the world was creating massive amounts of judgment wherever I went. Ironically, I was also scared to leave the house because my strong negativity was continuously magnetizing negative circumstances into my life. After I created this huge list, I rewrote it with the phrase "is good" at the end of each item. I had specific names as well as generalities, all of which now ended with "is good" or "is great." That night I had an amazing dream. The dream took place in the basement of a warehouse. In this place, from behind the shelves and stacks of boxes and from every possible corner you could imagine came a whole slew of assassins. They used every sort of medieval weapon you could think of to try and get to me, but I was invincible. I used kicks and punches, ducked, swung, flipped, you name it. I took all of them out with amazing accuracy and didn't get a scratch. I woke up the next morning feeling really great and revitalized, refreshed, much more positive than I had in a long time. It was then that my dream came back to me and I realized I had defeated all my judgments in my unconscious basement. My next achievement in self-awareness and in manifestation was in the area of relationships. From very early on, I seemed to gravitate towards women who had a tendency to want to control me. I bounced from relationship to relationship, not understanding how I was continuously recreating the exact same relationships over and over again. Why'd these women always want to control me? I couldn't understand it. Why I didn't realize at the time was that was what I wanted. I wanted someone to take over for me and play mommy. There were only too many women ready and willing to play that role for me. For every person willing to role play codependency, there will always be a partner willing to play along with you. The universe is abundant in everything that you desire, unconsciously as well as consciously. First step in breaking this cycle was becoming aware that I was continuously magnetizing women into my life who exemplified this type of partner. Each one was more extreme than the woman before. Eventually, I reached the point where I was tired of the lesson. Sometimes you just have to learn the hard way. I discovered this was true for me as well as for many other people I have worked with. The very last person in my life who exemplified this behavioral pattern was a woman who hurt me badly. I became fortunate. They cheated on me and I was able to leave the relationship even though I didn't want to. But I became aware of this pattern. And from there, I began to explore why I was creating this pattern and what lesson I needed to learn from it. It turned out to be about power and what it feels like to externalize your power or give it away. That last relationship, when I asked her, "What is love?" her only answer was, "It is control." Why did I stick with that relationship for so long? The unfortunate thing about this type of lesson is that it cannot be taught. It can only be experienced. You can teach awareness around it, but you cannot teach someone to quit giving their power away in relationships. Then the next thing I started to learn about was victim consciousness. Learning about victim consciousness was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. I used to get mad at everything. I would get mad at the traffic, mad at the parking meter maid, mad at my job, mad at my girlfriend, mad at my body, mad at the world. There's always someone or something else, fault, never mine, and then I would drink to try to numb the anger. When something didn't go my way, I wanted it. Out came the pointed finger to find a reason for it. It was all their fault. Mysteriously, the finger never seemed to point back at me. It always pointed outwards away from me. The reason the finger never found me was because I was unconsciously acting out the victim, and victims never point fingers at themselves. The beginning of victim consciousness starts with the question, why me? This unfortunate question became the validation for perpetuating my own worst nightmares. It's also a great excuse to do nothing about something. I was able to find plenty of reasons in life why I couldn't do what I want. If someone else had achieved the goal or dream I desired, I felt it was because they were lucky or born into it. The problem with that theory revealed itself when I finally began to meet some of the people I had previously assumed were born into success or just lucky, and a few were actually born into success and had enjoyed great advantages early in life. However, The majority of these big achievers started from even more humble beginnings than I had. They all had one thing in common that stuck with me. They never blamed anyone for anything. I started to read about people that were successful in autobiographies, and I noticed a pattern. None of those people would blame anyone else for their failures. Never, period, not one time. When I began taking responsibility for my choices and my reality, and all the negative energy that I had been creating, my life made a turn to the positive. As soon as I quit complaining, I started to actually make forward progress in my life. When you stop complaining, you actually have a chance to listen. And when you listen, you learn. I began to see how I was the creator of it all. I was the one that parked without paying attention to where the red lines were. I was the one that decided to drive at 8:30 in the morning when traffic is heaviest. I was the one that stayed up late the night before so I wasn't feeling well and rested, and thinking as clearly as I should. I was the one who kept showing up each day to a job that I hated. I was the one who previously chose to seek out mates in the confines of bars and under the influences of alcohol. I was the one who couldn't balance my checkbook. I was the one who chose not to take vacations. There was no else telling me to do these things. These were decisions that I made. I cannot tell you how powerful I became when I decided to quit complaining about the people and places and circumstances that I put myself in and around. Although I was now reaping some of the benefits from mastering many of my wonderful life lessons, I still had one big lesson to learn. As it turned out, there was an underlying theme to most of my other life lessons. Just like peeling back the layers of an onion, I began to get to the core of me, and I saw the big picture. And by far my largest life lesson was recognizing at the root of my problem stemmed from my constant attention-seeking behavior and my unquenchable need for outside validation. In one form or another, I had spent my entire life trying to impress people or to become the center of attention. I acted out this behavior in some seriously unhealthy ways. In my pursuit of becoming the center of attention, I would put myself in situations that became destructive to my life and my health. The problem was that I was always looking outside of myself for definition. Who was I? I had no idea who I was. Another problem was that I was scared all the time. I was always scared, both consciously of confrontation as well as unconsciously that someone would find out that I had no sense of self-worth. I was scared that it was all going to go wrong. I had a fear of everything being too good to be true. I had to learn that people cannot give me meaning or determine my destiny. I learned that I must cultivate my own feeling of self-worth and the inner strength of being that nobody else could provide. It was not until I gained this basic understanding and awareness of the fact that I was the source, I was the cause, and that I loved myself that my first genuine life teacher started to show up. I had to want it and be willing to commit to it. I am thankful and grateful for all the life lessons I was gifted. If it weren't for these wonderful lessons, I would not be doing this podcast. These things helped me become who I am. Going back to unconscious behavior, there really are two basic ways of perpetuating unconscious behavior in our lives. The first one you could call active unconscious behavior. Active unconscious behavior means that you're unaware of how you create your reality. This type of unconscious behavior usually constitutes the biggest portion of your growth and development as you struggle to hurdle the obstacles that you are unknowingly putting on your path. You cannot successfully create your own reality and remain in this type of consciousness at the same time. All of my great lessons, some of which I've mentioned, and many I haven't yet, occurred as a result of my living in this type of consciousness. When you are living your life in active unconscious behavior, you literally have no idea why your life is the way it is. You do not understand why you keep getting into the same relationships over and over again. You do not understand why you cannot get a better job. You don't get where all the extra pounds of weight are coming from. You cannot comprehend the idea that it is you who are creating all of it. In order for most people to get past their active unconscious behavior, you have to have a burning desire to do so, to be or experience more of what life has to offer. Either they have finally become fed up with their situation, or they just finally realize that they truly want more. Until they reach a point of real urgency, They will not be motivated, nor will they have the energy to learn, do, and apply all that is necessary to elevate themselves out of this level of thinking and being. This is not a judgment. There is no right and wrong. We are where we are, and it does not benefit anyone when we judge ourselves or another on the path. However, coming to this realization that you've been living your life unconsciously is a great achievement, and it is the most important one. One of the most important goals of this podcast is to help you come to this realization that you're living unconsciously. The other way you act out unconscious behaviors, what I and many others refer to as reactive unconscious behavior. This is a more easily recognizable and correctable form of unconscious behavior. Correcting this type of behavior can also help you to manifest greater things for yourself in your life. When you're operating in reactive unconscious behavior, you will react to any stimulus that triggers your emotional instability. You'll react to traffic, a fellow employee at work who annoys you, somebody who bumps into you in the store, a bill in the mail, a parking ticket, your spouse or mate, your children. When viewed through this type of unconscious behavior, life happens to you, not the other way around. Everything seems to be coming at you all the time, almost as if the world is out to get you. You bump into the wall or door, stub your toe, and suddenly it is as if the wall or door attacked you. Your children are not behaving the way they are supposed to. Never mind the fact that they are children and prone to act that way. You become irritable and angry and defensive, trying to defend yourself against an aggressive world. One book that I recommend, Soul Sword, of the Mind of a Zen Warrior by Vernon Kitabu Turner, and he refers to this type of behavior as push-button consciousness. Basically, you walk around all day with a big red button sticking out that says, push me for a reaction. Everything is a reaction. In severe circumstances, you become completely helpless to your big red buttons and bounce around from situation to situation, feeling more and more negatively. You must elevate yourself beyond this way of daily living if you wish to be in command of your reality creation. Think about it for a second. What chance do you have for purposely creating the reality of your dreams if you are constantly yelling at your wife, your husband, or your kids? Zero. What chance do you have of purposely directing your thoughts towards a beautiful vacation on an island paradise if you're always cussing someone out in traffic? Not much. How will you get into the feeling place of having your dream home in the mountains if you're angry at work all the time? When you begin to meditate, you create the space in your life to act instead of react. This is a good starting place towards diminishing your reactive, unconscious behavior and taking command of your reality creation. You must understand that your beliefs create reality, and your beliefs are not just a single thought, but a grouping of thoughts and a feeling that they are true. And once you get to that point where you've followed those 5 steps we talked about earlier, you come to a point where you believe in your new reality. Most people have a mass of conflicting and contradicting beliefs that are conscious and unconscious, and they struggle and strain against them. This in turn creates emotional highs and lows that hinder their ability to manifest what they want. I used to have the contradictory beliefs that I was a go-getter who could get a lot of money, and at the same time I was not worthy or deserving of having a lot of money. When I started to make money, I would do things to disrupt my ability to make money, and these contradictory beliefs always worked with each other in patterns. I was unconsciously sabotaging myself via my hidden beliefs about how I wasn't worthy and deserving. I had to address the unconscious beliefs I had about myself if I was ever going to make any kind of money whatsoever. I realized that I could become whatever I wanted to become, but not until I had released these limiting beliefs about myself. I changed it by affirming the truth of what I wanted to believe, seeing it, visualizing it, believing in it, reading about it. This is something that can happen to you when you begin to master your reality creation. You can literally allow yourself to experience people, places, and situations in life that would have made you previously uncomfortable. You may open yourself up to experiences that you would never have dared to before, spontaneously even, that are now magically within your grasp. You may even find that you are now free to want and experience more. You may even dare to expand on your list of wants when you have less limiting beliefs holding you back. Sometimes even your conscious beliefs have a way of unconsciously sabotaging you. This happens when they link to unconscious beliefs. This can affect your relationships, your health, everything in your life. Your beliefs underlie everything about you. I also wanted to just briefly discuss the mass mind, the mass consciousness, and pendulums. Every person emits their own personal energy field. This energy field emanates from them, extending outwards and around them. Your personal vibrational energetic field, as we have learned, is comprised of your conscious and unconscious intentions, a mixture of all your emotions, thoughts, and feelings, ultimately harmonizing into a single vibrational field that is you. The same can be said for a group of people as well. When a group of people get together, they have a tendency to synchronize or equalize their vibrational rate. Thus, their individual energy bodies begin to merge as one larger energy body. This can create what is called a pendulum in reality transurfing, or an egregore in occult teachings. And over time, this energy begins to assume an identity of sorts and comes alive. It can be likened to a rather large sub-personality, except that is more of a mass personality. This is also different from collective consciousness of mankind. Within the collective consciousness exists all the streams of consciousness of mankind. The mass mind exists rather as a collective unconscious of a populace in any given area. It feeds and thrives on energy of lower vibrational thoughts and emotions. Just as your pain body or subpersonality will become active to feed itself, so will this pendulum. This energy body can exist as a nation or even as small as a single family. There is an energy body around every single person and around every single group of people and every pendulum. As much as a person may find it is difficult to pull away from the energy of their family in their attempts to succeed at life, a person will find it difficult to overcome the unconsciousness of an area. For example, if you lived within a crime-ridden, poverty-stricken neighborhood, you might find it difficult to become successful. Indeed, you may find it near impossible, because every time you make a step in the right direction, you find yourself fighting against the very people around you. The mass mind consciousness of the area is saturated with beliefs in limitation and negativity. For some people, this is quite all right. Remember, there are no judgments, only that which serves your highest purpose and that which does not. However, if you desire to achieve growth and expansion in your life, you may need to leave the area. The same thing can be said of an individual family. I personally know of countless examples of people having to completely separate themselves from the family that they grew up in order to achieve their goals. If a family is stricken with limited negative thinking against themselves and the world at large, they will hold to this unconscious energy body in this pendulum. This energy becomes the mass mind of this family and takes on a life of its own. Thus, when someone tries to break free, this energy body becomes active as it now feels threatened. It will utilize whichever person is most susceptible to negativity and unconsciousness within the family to attack the threat. It will do whatever it can to defend itself and stay alive. The pendulums always just want money, and even in opposition to this energy body, it will still get energy. If, for example, one family member breaks free, relocates themselves, and becomes successful, it could lead to others doing the same thing. If this begins to happen, this energy body will start to diminish, and eventually it will lose its sustenance. And anytime you elevate yourself in any way, you lessen the likelihood of generating negative thoughts and emotions. Thus, for some individuals, the first biggest obstacle or struggle could be perceived as against their own family or their own pendulum. In actuality, however, it's not against their family, but rather against the collective unconsciousness of that pendulum. Use the term pain body as defined in Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. The collective unconsciousness is simply a larger version of the pain body. It is in essence the family pain body. Anytime somebody elevates or attempts to elevate themselves above the masses, whether it's within their own family or within their country, they must transcend the mass mind consciousness. They must transcend the pendulum or the egregore. It's a test of willpower. However you recognize what is happening, it will not take your willpower. I have noticed this with certain movements of disinformation that you find in the media, where there's new information that comes along and people have gotten sucked so much into this consciousness of this egregore or pendulum, they're simply incapable of changing their minds about new information. And it just drags their energy down. And in order for them to escape it, they have to completely overcome it. But once they do, they find that they have a greater level of energy. The best way I have found to elevate yourself beyond the mass mind is to simply not buy into it. Your first step is always, of course, the awareness that you have been plugged in up until now. You will need to be aware of how you yourself have been a part of the pendulum and have been living through it. It will also help you to remember that it's not black and white. As you elevate your conscious awareness, you transcend a little more each time. You decide not to buy into it by not believing in all the limitations that everyone else around you may be preaching. You may decide not to listen to the nightly news that feeds this particular pendulum with massive amounts of limiting belief systems. If you have an idea, a dream to build a business or do something big with your life, you may decide instead to keep it to yourself. After all, do you need someone else to believe in your idea? It always helps to have people support you in your efforts, but you will always risk encountering the pendulum if you go on and on about your great idea to anyone who will listen. Inevitably, you will encounter people who are plugged in that will tell you to forget it, face the facts, and get real. Reality is whatever you make it to be, but not everyone is ready to accept that. Accepting that you create your reality is also accepting responsibility for yourself. Thus, you'll need to accept responsibility for creating your own success and becoming self-sustaining if you wish to transcend pendulum consciousness. Have you ever felt like there was some force working against your best efforts to change? Let's say you decide you want to rise above your current situation, circumstance, or even peer group. Again, there is no judgment about where you are or anyone else. Let's just assume that you have come to the realization that you want to expand yourself. As you begin to undergo this process, you may encounter resistance from other people around you. A great example is when one member of a group of social drinkers decides they want to cut back on their alcoholic drinking. This is an easy example to illustrate because most people know or have known someone in this situation. Not only does this person have to face their own unconscious compulsions and inner saboteur, but they now have to face all their friends' unconscious mechanisms as well. Dealing with this level of inner and outer resistance can make someone feel as though they're trying to climb Mount Everest on their own without any gear and with no arms or legs. There are growing numbers of beliefs instilled within the many pendulums that stifle growth and creativity. These beliefs, or mass beliefs, for instance, the belief in limitation, only a few people can be rich and wealthy. There's always a cold and flu season, or the inevitability of disease, or life is a struggle, or God's love has to be earned, or one group of people is more deserving than another, or competition is necessary, or strength makes right, or you have to prove yourself, you must earn the right to be here. Those are all beliefs that are within the mass mind and the different pendulums that are guiding you. Any belief that is held by the masses as true, regardless of whether or not someone else has proven it to be untrue or not, is a mass belief. You could even just narrow it down to phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, or face the facts, it's Monday, must be nice, get used to it. You could also call these phrases victim statements with equal accuracy since they ignore the truth, which is that we control our reality, not the other way around. When people are plugged into the mass mind, they want you to play along. The mass mind, the pendulums, thrive on lack and limitation. A sure way to offend someone is to disagree with them when they're plugged in to the pendulum. And yet, in order to become a conscious creator, you will need to transcend all of the beliefs and limitation around you. Now, for the few that don't know what pendulums are, check out my episode on pendulums. I'm not talking about the pendulum that you dangle. I'm talking about the concept of the energetic structure that is formed in mass mind consciousness when multiple people think the same thought. This belief in limitations may mean that you can no longer play along anymore for you to get out of it. When someone tells you that life is a struggle and yet you know that we have the choice to create our reality the way we want to, you have to come to a critical point. Outwardly and blatantly disagreeing with someone seldom will ever bring you to the highest good. It will in fact only serve to diminish your vibrational energetic field. Since you do not wish to verbally agree with this person because you know your words are powerful, you also do not wish to disagree with them because you do not want to create conflict, your best option may be to give a gentle suggestion. What I like to do in circumstances like this, especially when someone is visibly waiting for you to agree with them, is to give an option like maybe. I like this approach because it does not create resistance in the other party, which only serves to lower your vibrational energetic field. Responding this way only reinforces within your own mind the fact that you know you create your reality. Or if during a delicate process of separating yourself from the mass mind, someone really wants to argue with you about some issue relating to a pendulum or a mass mind belief that they are espousing, you can always give them the most inarguable point you could ever make. Simply tell them that is not what I believe. You wouldn't even want to tell them that your beliefs are different, because this will still create conflict with someone who is dead set on being right. The one thing you cannot argue with is what you believe. You cannot change someone's beliefs by force, ever, and you usually can't really argue it anyway. Since inherently everyone recognizes this, it is always your fail-safe to protect yourself from an environmental conflict with people who are still plugged in. You have to be a little bit selective about what you share with people who are plugged in to mass mind and pendulum belief systems. The stronger the belief in limitation, the stronger the reaction you will get if you challenge their belief. You don't want to respond to the insane homeless guy on the street who asks for money by telling him that he creates his own reality. He may flip out on you. When you start gaining awareness about beliefs, you may wish to remember 2 golden rules that you can live by. First of all, the best advice given is advice asked for. And secondly, if you want to lead by example. Your only job is to work on you and unplug yourself from the belief in limitation. You will not have to chase people down and tell them they need to unplug from limitation. The people who want to change will be inspired and drawn to you by your ability to go against the perceived odds to create your life the way you want to. When someone comes to you and asks you how you have achieved such an amazing, fantastic life, then you can tell them. They will be more ready to receive the gift of freedom now that you are in a position to give it. There are many mass beliefs that are localized to various regions around the world. People in different countries face different challenges according to the belief systems that are held by the majority of people in that area. For example, in some countries in Africa, you're literally lucky to survive with both arms and legs. It is widely agreed amongst many of the people in these countries that this is just the way that life is. In order to effect change, a person would be going up against that particular mass belief. Great leaders have emerged to lead peoples and nations to victory. However, it is also clear that these particular souls incarnated for that particular purpose. Most people are still working on creating their own life and the way they want it, minus the fact they may be in an area where the accepted way of life is far from the way they want it, anyone would want it. Sometimes it will be necessary to extract yourself from certain areas and certain groups, locally, regionally, even online, if you wish to elevate yourself above this sort of group consciousness that exists within the pendulum. If there is mortar fire going off around you, or the neighbor's kids just died of starvation, your first priority might just be to leave the country that you're in. Sure, it's easy to rattle off this advice while safely within the confines of a wealthy nation, and yet many people have already done this exact thing, and indeed made it happen by focusing their attention upon what they wanted. Anything is possible, and you can create reality. Perhaps after you have elevated your consciousness to a necessary level, you may return and emerge as a great leader, bringing needed change to an entire country or nation. You will not be able to do this until you yourself have transcended the mass mind and mastered the ability to create your own reality first. Thus, in some cases, it would be necessary to leave an area, spend some time building up your vibrational energetic field in a more hospitable environment, then return when you're able to affect change. Is the energy you are in or around compatible to living the life of your dreams? Otherwise, you may energetically deplete yourself trying to create something that is not supported by your environment and the mass beliefs of the area that you're in. An example of this type of situation would be living in a neighborhood that does not match your vibrational rate of attraction. It could be the energy of the people or the energy of the land itself. Everyone has a personal preference as to their ideal living situation, and when you are out of accord with that, you will drain your vibrational energetic field. Conversely, when you take the time to find the neighborhood and area that you are a vibrational match to, you serve to enhance and increase your vibrational energetic field. Anytime you feel resistance to the area around you, you are not in alignment with the flow of energy. It is important to be in harmony with the energy of the people or the area where you are living, because it will help you to stay in the flow and purposely create your reality with the greatest of ease. This is not a complete summary of the things that may be limiting your ability to manifest the reality that you want. But you can come back to this and perhaps you'll find some of the reasons for it. In most of the cases, I find that it is unconscious. The reasons are unconscious, and you can find clues to the unconscious things that you're doing to limit your manifestations in little things like the way that you speak, the words that you use, the words that you write, the way you talk to other people. If a portion of this episode rang true to you, go back to it and analyze it. But you are simply a belief away from everything that you want. You can change yourself much faster, and you can change your unconscious nature much faster than you think. As we move into a fourth density new earth, you are seeing everyone around you become their unconscious natures. You're seeing the unconscious natures of everyone around you. People are acting crazy. They're doing crazy things. The world seems more chaotic, and that's because they're unconscious. They're unconscious pendulum zombies. And you can overcome this, and once you do, you can do anything that you want. Just take responsibility for the reality you want. Become aware of your unconscious ability to create your reality and change that as well. You create your reality every moment, every second, and now you can start afresh, anew, in creating the reality that you want. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.